Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from whichever part of the world you're joining in. My name is Mihir Bhosle. I'm an assistant policy analyst with CUTS International, and I would like to welcome you to this very opportune webinar or virtual panel discussion, as we are calling it, on I2U2 towards a transformative quadrilateral partnership. So we have a esteemed panel today, but just as your host, we just wanted to uh, announce a couple of things. So this discussion will be recorded and it will be up on the Cuts YouTube channel. So you're free to have a look later on also, and it will be for viewers later. And also, we would request you to, we hope that you would be able to join us throughout the session. This session will has started now, and it will go on till quarter to 8. So that's the India time, quarter to 8 p.m. India time. And meanwhile, we request all participants in this webinar, all audience to kindly post their questions in the chat box, and we will take it up subsequently for discussion. So with that, without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Pradeep S. Mehta, the General Secretary of CUTS International, for delivering the welcome remarks.
Thank you, Mihir, and let me add to your welcome to all the distinguished delegates as well as participants to this very opportune webinar, as you rightly said, I2U2, towards the transformative quadrilateral partnership. You might wonder why we have chosen a theme that resonates with such profound optimism. The answer lies in the unique potential of the strategic collaboration between Israel, India, the United Arab Emirates, and the United States. The I2U2 group, born in October 2021, represents more than just a traditional diplomatic alliance. It is a forward-thinking partnership that deliberately moves beyond conventional geopolitical constraints, instead focusing on economic pragmatism and strategic collaboration. This quadrilateral grouping represents a cross-continental bridge that defies traditional geopolitical alignments, in which we have a resource-rich Middle Eastern nation, the UAE, a South Asian powerhouse, that is India, a technological innovator, Israel, and a global superpower, USA, collaborating in ways that challenge existing diplomatic paradigms. I2U2 deliberately sidesteps traditional conflict narratives. Instead of focusing on historical tensions or regional disputes, the I2U2 partnership prioritizes pragmatic economic cooperation and technological innovation. It is a model of diplomatic engagement that puts shared economic and strategic interests ahead of historical differences. Earlier this month, India's External Affairs Minister, Mr. Dr. S. Jaishankar, speaking at the Manama Dialogue in Bahrain, affirmed hope for the progress of the I2U2 grouping. He captured the spirit of I2U2, highlighting the Gulf region as a vital bridge between Europe and Asia. This perspective underscores the strategic significance of our partnership. Launched during the 2023 G20 summit in New Delhi, this landmark project aims to enhance connectivity between Asia, the Arabian Gulf, and Europe through integrated maritime, road, and railway networks. As a testament to our ambition is the India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, IMEC, an ambitious project that promises to reshape connectivity between the continents. Again, Launched during the G20 summit in India, this landmark project aims to enhance connectivity between Asia, the Arabian Gulf, and Europe through integrated maritime, road, and railway networks. Through IMEC, we are not just building infrastructure, we are building bridges between cultures and economies. Despite the complex geopolitical challenges from regional conflicts to ongoing tensions, the I2U2 group stands as a beacon of collaborative potential. We demonstrate that nations can come together, transcending traditional boundaries to address shared challenges and create mutual opportunities for a shared prosperity. Therefore, our optimism is not a blind hope, but a carefully calibrated approach rooted in concrete possibilities. We see immense potential in targeted joint investments that can truly make a difference. Imagine integrated food parks that address food security, hybrid renewable energy projects that combat climate change, and innovative space-based ventures that push the boundaries of technological cooperation. The I2U2 partnership represents a new paradigm in international relations, one that prioritizes economic integration, technological innovation, and strategic collaboration over historical divisions. Through this webinar, we expect our esteemed panelists to provide deep critical insights into the strategic potential, economic opportunities, and geopolitical implications of the I2U2 partnership, exploring its innovative approach to addressing global challenges. Through their expert perspectives, we hope to understand how this quadrilateral collaboration can transcend traditional diplomatic boundaries and reshape international economic and strategic cooperation. Thank you and namaste.
Thank you, Mr. Mehta, for your valuable comments and setting the tone for this panel discussion. Now, I request Ambassador Anil Trigunath, who is the former Indian ambassador to Jordan, Libya, and Malta, and he wears many hats, as we know, as an academic, as a think tank leader. So over to Ambassador Trigunath for moderating the session, and over to you, Ambassador. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Meher, and thank you, Mr. Mehta and Kutch, for currently focusing on this very important initiative, which at one time was even termed as the West Asian Quad, or for that matter, a quartet, as it was called, because it had those strategic implications. And in my view, it was perhaps a natural progression to the Abraham Accords that was signed just about a year ago. And then when Dr. Jaishankar was visiting Israel, at that time we heard of the I2U2 being launched. This is one thing about it, that it also has moved very fast. Not only that there are Sherpas already appointed and meeting, there are also the heads of government level meetings that have taken place in 2022. There have been business meetings that have been continuing. So, from India's perspective, I would like to say that this was truly a strategic move because it also shows so far India has done only has been engaged with most countries bilaterally and to some extent in the region with the GCC and the Arab League, but that was just not sufficient. I believe that this is the first sub-regional, regional, and beyond the region approach in which these four countries, India, USA, UAE, and Israel, have been enmeshed by bringing about their individual synergies for making it a great success. It, of course, in my view, has a great potential because the way we have seen the things panning out immediately, the projects in the food security, $2 billion investment in integrated food parks, as Mr. Mehta has said, or for that matter, sustainable development and clean energy is very important. Likewise, it was also decided that we will have private enterprise partnership of the I2U2, which has gone ahead. There is also a innovation hub that is going to be created in Gurgaon. So I think that it is something that we have seen one of the few uh, initiatives that have started yielding results rather fast. And following from that, the IMEC with the Middle East Corridor, which was launched on the sidelines of the G20 summit in New Delhi, was again a natural strategic corollary that went on. So I believe that this shows the direction in which India is dealing with its strategic partners. The UAE is India's third largest bidding partner, the major investment partner. It's been one of the probably the only country where Prime Minister Modi has visited 7 times, and the Sheikh Zayed has been there 4 times to India. So UAE-India relationship is extremely important. So, in the context of the IMEC, the connectivity corridors, we have seen that even though due to some the current ongoing political hiatus, I would say, because of the ongoing war, there is a minor glitch at the moment, but it is continuing, and India and UAE have carried on with the projects, whether it is for the hydrogen mission or sub cables and all that. So there are a lot of projects that are going through, and I'm sure we are going to listen to various individual projects through this. And this is something, a project which we can say is connecting the Indian Ocean to the Mediterranean to the Atlantic. And let us see how it eventually works out. There are strategic dialogues that can be enmeshed and blended. So I won't take much time on this, but I would request all the esteemed panelists, and we have a great gathering of intellectuals here to tell us in 5 minutes. I mean, that's what is the real issue is, and I think that you will yourself restrain from going beyond and encroaching into somebody other panelists' time. So first, I would like to request my friend Ambassador Naur Gilon to share his thoughts. Ambassador.
Thank you very much to Katz and to you, Anil, for moderating us here and making sure that we stand on time. I think that many people probably are a little bit, although you mentioned already in your 2 briefings the order of things, but I think the biggest change we had in the Middle East was the Abraham Accords in September 2020, which changed the paradigm, I think, of thinking in the Middle East, brought UAE and Bahrain, and later on Morocco and what used to be Sudan, but broken up since then, into the accords. And from there, it was easier to go to the I2U2, which became as mentioned here, very project-oriented organization, or it's not an organization, it's a union maybe, and then to IMEC during the G20. And why, first of all, why are we there? Why is it so important? I think it's very important because we are back into a kind of Cold War in the world. So the multilateralism in the world is more or less stuck. Anything that is not in consensus between the powers is a zero-sum game, and it's stuck. And that's why we are going to what we call professionally the minilaterals, these smaller groups that join together on a specific interest. And when it comes to I2U2, there is a lot of logic in going there, because there is a lot of synergy, and mentioned before, between the economies. All 4 are very strong economies. All 4 have some kind of technological level, financial stability and ability. India adds a huge capacity of manufacturing and cheap and experienced labor. So I think that the synergy here is smart, but it's also important for the region, because we are trying to change the region, create a new reality. And of course, the elephant in the room is October 7. And since then, it was much harder, of course, to publicly go on, although there were things going on, but less publicly. But it became a little bit a little bit harder. But I would suggest that if anything, once we come over October 7 and the aftermath, if anything came out of it, it's even the more importance for the cooperation of the like-minded in the region, not less, much more. And I think that everyone understands that the stability of the region, the ability to create a new reality, depends on our ability of the like-minded countries to work together. And Anil, you mentioned a little bit. I think that another problem beyond October 7 that was a little bit a weight on our chain on our energy forward was in both in I2U2 and IMEC. We don't have really a mechanism. There is no secretariat. There is no body. There are Sherpas in the I2U2 which meet from time to time. But we probably will need to be more organized if we want to have success. It can be in the I2U2, it can be for a project. So we can decide that on the food corridor, on the energy, on the space, there will be one coordinator from one country doing everything. One of the principles agreed on I2U2 that there is no must that all 4 countries will be on all projects. So we can do it here, 3 countries, there are 2 countries, another place, 4 countries. So we are doing that, and another I think thing that slowed us a little bit, where unfortunately we are democracies, and there were elections both in India and the US, and attention was elsewhere. So I hope that now we are coming back, and we have a good opportunity. The Abraham Accord started at the time of the Trump administration. And I think that it can be his legacy, although we have to say that the IMEC, although it existed in the time I heard it much before it was announced, it existed there in the background for a very long time. But I think that this is very logically a continuation of the Abraham Accords. So the logic of creating connectivity in the region, adding to it, it's not only about trade, by the way. There are fears, for example, in the IMEC by Egypt and others. Egypt, for example, that it will be substituting the Suez Canal. There is no way. The magnitude you can take on a train is very much limited in comparison to the ability of a place like Suez Canal. Very much so. It will be faster. It will probably be more expensive. No one did yet, but for fresh products, for example, it will have an advantage maybe. Otherwise, beyond that, I think that the IMEC has a huge potential because, as mentioned before, we are thinking of doing there much more than just train or freight. It will be also transportation of, hopefully, there will be a grid connectivity. There will be information connectivity, maybe green hydrogen ability. So it will be very, very interesting. It has a potential to help to Jordan, for example, to give Jordan something of value because there will be money around the train and the business around it. It can help develop, for example, the desert in Saudi Arabia. So it has a lot of potential, and it gives another route that will start in India and finish in Europe. So it's really a win-win thing. The challenge here, and I'll finish by this to stand in time, will be to have Saudi Arabia on board. This is really the challenge. But I think that the Trump administration, if they decide that they want it, the relations between them and Saudi Arabia are good. They are, I mean, that's how things started moving in the region. And I think they have the power and ability to bring the Saudis on board and create the IMEC and make it happen. So I'll finish in 5 minutes, I think, 6 maybe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Noel. Very timely and very good comments. And I fully agree with you that there ought to be some kind of a secretariat or a mechanism to keep track and to move these Sherpas is at least good. But as I said, that in most of the organizations that one is member of, you see the very fast progress in this, irrespective of the constraints. And you're right. I mean, Trump has been invested in Abraham Accords, and he'll definitely be invested in the IMEC and others which have been there. So their natural progression. Thank you so much. And now I'll request Dr. Janardhan to kindly take the floor.
Thank you,
9 minutes.
Ambassador Trigoniath. I think let me share with you some thoughts on how I2U2 fits with the UAE's agenda. But before that, I think I just want to qualify that there have been references made to I2U2 as a West Asia quad. I think it's right in the sense of it being a quad, but I think it's very different from the more famous and the less effective quad that we know. Which has some security connotations. In that sense, I2U2 is more economic oriented. It's non-ideological. It's so pragmatic that it's not a prisoner of the past. There is no Iran or China there for us to, outsmart, but it's more a partnership of the future. Not a prisoner of the past, but it's a partnership of the future. And I think we should also appreciate that minilaterals don't need secretariats because I think they are agenda driven, they're nimble, and I think that's what makes them nimble. They are agenda driven and they're informal, and perhaps things won't move as fast if there is a secretariat. I mean, it's just a thought because we've been discussing that perhaps things can move faster. How much faster do you want the I2U2 to move? Because within a year after it was announced, you had a $2.3 billion project that was announced as part of the Food Corridor project. So let's not be too over-ambitious. Yes, it has been a tad slow just because of the geopolitical issues, October 7th and thereafter, and elections. But I think it's working much better than most others. Partly because I think the private sector has been involved in it, and we must involve more private sector in most of the endeavors that we have as part of the minilateral arrangement, because I think they bring a certain dynamism which perhaps the governments and the bureaucracy doesn't bring in. And as a result, I think there is so much involved and so much of stakes involved in I2U2 that it will survive the test of time, and it will pick up speed once we have some political movement that for all the events that happened on October 7 and thereafter. In having said this, I think ideally my discussion slot should have been more about evolving geo-economic landscape and regional cooperation rather than geopolitical, because I think we are now in an era where geoeconomics is influencing geopolitics. Unlike during the Cold War, there is a great deal of buzz about economic reform over political reform. And all this is happening amid technological advancements. I mean, the world is really flat. There are many rising powers which are coming to center stage based on, several Cs. I'll explain that in a bit. And we are now in an age of reglobalization where there is rewiring of supply chain and routes, and we must see I2U2 in that respect. Together, all of these have rendered the global order in a flux. And the collective power of some of the developing countries is really disrupting or challenging the system. And we are now witnessing big powers, established powers, actually lining up to collaborate with small and medium powers or middle powers. And, some of us will complain that there is disorder, but there is always, change always brings chaos. And just to demonstrate in terms of why I'm emphasizing that geoeconomics is at the core and not geopolitics, let me just give you 4 examples of how the economic center of gravity is shifting. In 1995, E7, emerging 7, that is China, India, Indonesia, Brazil, Russia, Mexico, and Turkey, were half the size of the G7 economies. In 2015, E7 was around the same as G7, and it is expected by 2040 that E7 could be double the size of G7 economies. That's data set number 1. Data set number 2, a combination of China, India, Japan, Korea, and their trade relations with the GCC countries totals up to about $400 billion plus. And if you put European Union and the United States together, that's just about 200. In fact, just the European Union and the United States together is not even equal to what the GCC countries trade with China. That's data number set 2 for you. Number 3 is that the United States used to actually depend on this region for 65% of its oil up to 2005. Currently, Asia's big four, China, India, Japan, and Korea, get 65% of the GCC's energy resources. That's data set number 3. Number 4, if you look at the GDP growth rates projections moving forward up to 2050, and most of this data is American or Western data and not Chinese data, so you don't have to doubt the data much. The fact is that most of the developing countries will be growing at more than double, the GDP rate, growth rates of developed countries or developing countries. So this means that there will be more and more of South-South cooperation. There will be more economic engagement and partnerships in the global South. Why did the UAE opt for innovative partnerships like I2U2? Because I think generally there's been West economic slowdown, Asian economic boom. There has been a failure of some of the international actors. There has been a realization that regional problems require regional solutions. The fundamental understanding has been that economic sense is common sense. I keep emphasizing this because I think most of the collaborations that are taking place are non-ideological, and that is clearly demonstrated in the UAE's shift towards India after having Pakistan as its major and ideological partner up to 2000, and now in terms of shifting relations towards Israel as part of the Abraham Accords. There has been a deliberate attempt to link their economic, diplomatic, and security diversification. And there is a natural economic complementarity in terms of the infrastructure investment link. And I keep using several M's. Really, this is a multipolar world. It's a multi-aligned and multi-networked world. We must see this world as a marketplace more than anything else. And this is an age where more and more middle powers are beginning to make a statement, and they are pursuing minilaterals as innovative diplomacy. And to use Amitav Acharya's term, it's actually a multiplex world where there are a host of actors other than the state actors themselves, including non-state actors, multinationals, international organizations, social groups, and a host of others. So the UAE is in I2U2 and IMEC on the one hand. It's in BRICS and BRI and Shanghai Cooperation Organization on the other, and with France and India in a third format. What this means is that the UAE and India now are in bilateral, trilateral, quadrilateral, and other minilateral partnerships. That's the sort of dynamism that we are seeing in terms of new collaborations, and all the new strategic, comprehensive collaborations that the UAE is having, whether it is with US, Russia, China, India, Japan, South Korea, they all are economic, diplomatic, and security dynamics. There are plenty of joint naval, air, and military exercises to go with it, because I don't think we should be looking at most of the economic projects as purely economic. Eventually, the more investment goes into it, the more projects we have, the more people are involved. We need to connect it with economic security as well. And let me end on this note that why I2U2 works well is because it has a few middle powers who don't rely excessively on military prowess. Yes, the United States does, Israel to some extent does, but I think India and UAE look more in terms of, utilizing several C's, which is capital, commerce, collaboration, connectivity, cyber, that is technology, climate, and they are involved in competition, and they are also making a great deal of compromises. I think minilaterals like I2U2 use these C's better, and hence I2U2 will have a future as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Janardhan. With your C's definitely sum up everything. And you have mentioned quite a few, but I believe that geoeconomics at the core, and that is the fundamental objective. And I think that the most countries are following that to the hill. But for that, of course, the geopolitics also has to be somewhat stable. So thank you for your uh, views in the matter. Now we have Ms. Kathleen Devi Mistry, the CEO of the Mistry Advisor USA.
Thank you very much. I want to thank Mr. Mehta, the Secretary General, all the team that worked so hard to put this together. It's a great access for many companies around the world to listen and to talk to people who are much more distinguished than myself. I'm going to be coming at it from a long-term businesswoman, but mostly smaller business and private sector rather than government. I work with the US, UAE, and India. I think if you're not in all these three companies for business, I think you're making a mistake, especially the UAE and India. I think there's just a huge growth pattern going on. And trade development has no boundaries. Every time we create jobs when we have trade, and we need to put more people to work. That's the bottom line with everything. It's anytime you have trade development, you have a win-win for both countries. Cultural understanding must be built. You must be patient. In Abu Dhabi, we have a loving saying that we're going to have to drink about 50 cups of coffee before we really move forward. But it's very, very enjoyable because by that time you've built some trust and understanding of each other and some cultural understanding as well as people and business understanding. I was in Abu Dhabi recently. The government and business community want us to increase our long-term business. They want us to put a footprint down in Abu Dhabi or in Dubai. They want to know that we're there for the long term. They want us to build something, maybe a distribution plant. It's a marvelous area for using your company's expansion in a hub plus 1 or 2 situation where you can easily get to the African continent or Europe in just maybe 6 hours. It's a great opportunity for many, many companies from different countries. They also want us to bring value to the table. They said, no more handouts, no more Christmas stockings. They want us to be serious, bring some money, bring something, maybe patents. They want something concrete, and they want Americans or Indians to come to UAE to work, to be there to guide their companies at the beginning. And the sovereign wealth funds such as Mubadala, ADIA, they will have more investments in India. It is very, very important that we work closely and to keep in sight the vision of the UAE, whether it's the 2030 or 2040. I've even read the 2075 draft. I think data, artificial intelligence, renewable energy, food security. I'm thrilled about the food processing and logistics developments. ADIA, I just read, has opened an office in Gujarat, which is exciting. And I hope that all 3 countries will open their offices very soon in each other's countries. UAE has about 16 billion USD invested in India, according to the latest records I can find. India has invested over USD 17 billion UAE. In 2023, the US has invested USD 49 billion in FDI to India. The USA FDI in the Emirates was 16.9 billion in 2022. The UAE's total direct investment to the USA exceeds US dollars 1 trillion. That is a serious partner. We should be very grateful to the Emirates for believing in what our various sectors that they've invested in. I advise you to go and set up companies, open an office, open a factory, label this as your hub plus 1, hub plus 2, and put American, Emirati, or Indian staff in place on the ground. Hire local citizens and residents. Involve your company in the local community. Learn the culture. One time when I was at the National Day dinner for Saudi Arabia in Washington, I ate with the college students. And after they trusted me a little bit, I said, tell me something. I have clients that want to go over to the GCC and especially Saudi that are very naive about your country. What should I tell them? So they had a little discussion. And they came back to me and they had tears in their eyes. And they said, tell them to know our culture first. So then I had tears in my eyes. But anyway, it was a great, great evening. Join all your chambers, join your business clubs, join the committees. Your benefits will multiply throughout the years that you're in that country doing business. And then you know what? You're going to end up having friends for life. I can't tell you how many colleagues, sons or daughters I've helped get into university. It extends beyond the business. UAE has announced that they will be investing the $2 billion, as we talked about, in $2 billion in 2.5 years to set up food processing facilities in India. The agricultural sector in India needs help. Our small farmers, they don't have an extra 100 rupees at the end of the month. They really do need somebody's help to help steer them and to give them some sort of support. I'm very happy the Emirates is going to set up and help with the growing cold storage, processing, and logistics. Sending foodstuffs from India to the UAE and beyond is of primary importance for the agricultural sector in India. Let us appreciate this comprehensive partnership that we're all involved in now, and please appreciate SIPA. And I look forward to being part of this growth, and I'm just so pleased to have been part of this group tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you very much, especially for touching upon the cultural traits and several do's and don'ts and giving various tips to the businesses that want to do it. I would also say that perhaps this grouping could also look at Africa, because at least India, UAE, and Israel have their own special areas of expertise that can be brought together and synergized for basically large-scale farming and agriculture and food processing areas. And all the three are also very much invested in Africa. So I think that's one area in which we could also work together. So thank you so much for bringing fresh perspectives on this. Now I'll request Vas Chinoy to please take the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you for Katz for holding this very opportune webinar on I2U2 and IMEC. When we did the Indo-Mediterranean Initiative in Rome in June and we launched it, one fundamental issue that came up was without trust, there can be no trade. And without security, there can be no trade. So while I agree with a lot of the C's of Professor Janardhan, I'd like to make a small observation that while this I2U2 grouping does not have the same Quad connotation that the other Quad does, the three countries, India, Israel, and the UAE, have been fundamentally involved in each other's security and protection over time. I mean, the UAE-India partnership, whether it's a trade partnership or it's a mutual security partnership, or it is provision of manpower, or it is protection, or it is food security, has been a fundamental relationship since the formation of the UAE and since the independence of India. And as well as with Israel, there has been a very strong relationship. I think Ambassador Gilon will testify to this. Even since 1953, when the informal relationship between the two countries started, which was then forged in steel with 2611, after 2611. So I think the first thing that bases this Quad is, apart from ideological issues, because there is also a common language on ideology, whether it is the Jewish community in India that has lived for thousands of years unmolested, or whether it is as recent as this year, the first temple that was inaugurated in the Arabic Peninsula in Abu Dhabi. You know, there's a lot of common language on tolerance and mutual acceptance. So I think these kind of cultural issues form the fundamental basis for trade, because trade is not independent of politics. Trade is not independent of culture or religion or thought. So this kind of tolerance and this kind of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, India's kind of foreign policy mantra, where the whole world is one family, forms the basis for trust on which trade is based on. I'll take a little away from Professor Janardhan's C's to the real C's. I think India has ignored its position as a maritime power for the past 70 odd years of its existence. I think in the past 10 years, since the Modi government, there has been a new awakening that apart from all its land borders and its 2.5 wars, India sits and projects into the Indian Ocean, and the Indian Ocean region is fundamental for India's security and well-being. Also, this has brought, and this with Shinzo Abe's confluence of 2C's speech and the formation of the other Quad, has created an India-centric world where the Asia Pacific has become redefined to the Indo-Pacific. And more importantly, these relationships have gotten consolidated. The India-Israel UAE relationship since the Abraham Accords have consolidated into one, and as it must be, with the United States adding value as the global superpower who has fabulous relationships with all the three countries. So I think the Indo-Mediterranean itself, I mean, India's sphere of influence has always been the Indian Ocean region in the past 10 years. The Indo-Mediterranean itself has then been an extension of this to Europe, because the India-Europe business relationship and trade routes have been fundamental for humanity. I mean, battles have been fought over it. India was colonized for over 200 years because of this. And now we're entering a third phase of trade, which also involves data. So I think the I2U2 relationship and eventually the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor functions also on the future proofing of not only the trade routes, which, the current Israel Hamas conflict shows is fundamental. You need a route that is complementary to Suez. I wouldn't say replacing Suez, but complementary to Suez. And IMEC proposes to be just that. But also you need routes to protect not just energy flow and the flow of cargo, but also the flow of data. And I think the corridor that then creates from Mundra right up through the UAE, through the Arabian Peninsula, through Saudi Arabia, through Israel, right up to the Mediterranean, creates that perfect future-proofed corridor for data cables also to be laid, where you don't have to risk running cables to the Bab al-Mandab and being at the hostage of state, non-state actors who may or may not be hostile to this project. So I think, in a way, trade is not independent of geopolitics, of culture, of religion, of ideology. I think it's a sum of all things. I also believe that the I2U2 partnership is not something new. I just think it's a consolidation of something that has developed over the past 2-3 decades independently. The India-Israel relationship, the India-UAE relationship, and finally the India-US relationship, which I believe is probably the newest entrant in the whole group and not the oldest. So I think it's the consolidation of these relationships. I also think it's also very focused on common language and common values. And I think that's the most important part, because the UAE has always led the GCC in development and in, going ahead of barriers. I think UAE has been probably the most progressive country in the GCC. And I do believe that the Saudi-Israeli rapprochement, which is fundamental for the success of IMEC, is an eventuality. I don't think it is. It's just a matter of time that it will happen, because the UAE is strong enough and influential enough and has strong enough roots to be the fundamental driver, as it has done generationally, to India-Europe trade. So I think we're just reinventing the wheel in a far more efficient format. And then, I will let the discourse of secretariats and non-secretariats, because representing the Indian Chamber of Commerce, business likes less bureaucracy. So secretariats and groupings having more offices just looks like more bureaucracy. So I would rather say that a nimble, agile grouping that works on projects and focuses on deliverables with more private sector engagement is very successful. And I think all the 4 countries involved are absolutely prepared to go in that direction. I also think it's very important to involve maybe a third eye like Italy or a European. I mean, I say Italy, I'm partial to it, but a European partner, because I think I2U2 needs a European component, because I think it has its own maturity, but it will need an extension, specifically given IMEC. So I think it makes sense to have an extension into Europe, but I think already the grouping itself is going well and it's very effective. So thank you so much, and I hope I've stayed with my time,
Thank you.
Ambassador.
Thank you, Vas. You really hit on the nail, and that is without trust and security, there is no trade. And that's precisely the issue that one is talking about. Your suggestions about the future proofing and including one of the European countries, preferably yours, is a new suggestions. And I think that in time going forward, because there's nothing very closed, and it depends on how synergies can be harnessed. Now I'll request Ms. Velina Chakarova. He's a well-known geopolitical strategist, and now she's joining us from Austria, if I remember correctly. Velina, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I wish I were in Australia. That will be really nice given the weather right now. But I'm still based in Austria, in Vienna. And I think it's a very good and logical connection to the previous input, while I will obviously focus more on the European, let's say, future contribution to these important connectivities. Now, we've heard from our participants already about their thoughts on the upcoming, let's say, geopolitical and geoeconomic environment. I share some of the views. Still, I argue, and I have a little bit of a different interpretation of what's happening right now in global affairs. And that is why I also consider the emergence of multifold connectivity projects. Probably 2024 is the year with the most connectivity projects. I argue that what we are observing right now in terms of global geopolitics and geoeconomics is more of the direction of, let's say, bifurcation of the global system. That is a Cold War kind of context between United States on the one hand with strategic partners and allies around the globe. It's no longer about the transatlantic community. It's also about partners in the Gulf, partners in West Asia, as well as in the Indo-Pacific, and the dragon bear, that is China, Russia. Now, obviously, most are focusing on the Chinese connectivity with the most significant up today connectivity, that is the Belt and Road Initiative, launched in 2013, but it's actually China, Russia. And if you take a look at what happened this year as a potential competitor to the initiative we are discussing, we've seen the revival of Vladivostok-Chennai between Russia and India on the one hand, but also we saw the further operationalization and facilitation of the international North-South transport corridor. So it's not just China. And then what we have, and we have to discuss, is obviously the European reaction to these upcoming corridors. I argue that, the initiative that we are discussing right now and its prolongation with the IMEC corridor is practically not possible to exist in the long term without the European partners. And here, of course, we've seen some interest coming up from certain European countries. Italy was mentioned. France is certainly very interested. And we saw also following the trip of Indian Prime Minister Modi to Greece, that Greece will be obviously another connectivity option. Now, looking from a European perspective, what would be, you would ask, what will be the contribution of the European partners? I mean, let's not forget that we still talk about the most sophisticated common market in the world, and we have already other trade blocks, which are not so, deeply institutionalized as the common market of the European Union. But this common market is now actually finding partners around the world in terms of true economic appeal. Think of the European Union Mercosur free trade agreement. That is an agreement with several leading Latin American countries. And I would argue that some sort of free trade agreement, a similar free trade agreement, could be signed between the European Union and the Gulf states. And without this kind of free trade agreement, and of course, obviously, let's not forget that free trade agreement negotiations between Brussels, that is the European Union Commission, and India have been relaunched as well in 2023 after 10 years of a break. These are significant developments in terms of multilateralism and in terms of diplomatic and institutional efforts to facilitate this important connectivity. If we end up with free trade agreements between the European Union and the Gulf states as a bloc, let's say, as a group of key countries in West Asia, and in a parallel with India, which I would argue will be the most important geoeconomic achievement. This will be by far the biggest achievement, actually, of the European Union as an institutional player. And let's not forget, if we still want to discuss the role of institutional players and the role of diplomacy and multilateralism, there you have a perfect case of an institutional actor that is quite successful and that is still bringing something to the table in terms of competences, in terms of skills, in terms of really very experienced diplomats and bureaucrats when it comes to this concrete, trade contracts. Now, I saw in the Q&A that there was a question and actually a comment coming from Jim Carafano, our common friend and dear colleague, about the 3Cs initiative. Why should we really care about the European contribution when we are discussing this important connectivity? In fact, I argue that both IMEC and I2U2 are to be considered as a merger of key geoeconomic connectivity in this particular part of the world, West, South Asia, with the connects to Eastern Mediterranean, and that means also Eastern Europe. And Jim said, he made a very, very important point about the 3Cs initiative, and that is an initiative that nobody knows about, even in Europe, which is tragic given its importance, because it's about creating infrastructure, missing infrastructure, north-south from Scandinavian towards actually Central Eastern European countries, and connecting these countries to the most important global flows, or digital flows, or trade flows, energy, and so on and so forth. All of the obviously multi-layered global trade that is going to go to West Asia, and from there South Asia and Southeast Asia, which is going to be the most important and the fastest growing economic center in the world, without any dispute. So this infrastructure is lacking, it's missing, because in the last 60 years, more or less, infrastructure in Europe was built east-west, be it energy or trade corridors or expansion, geoeconomic expansion with the enlargement waves. So now I argue that what we need to create is also an awareness that investors from outside, specifically from West Asia, be it now UAE or Israel, obviously following the peace solution in the region, and Saudi Arabia, and so on and so forth, have to also invest in this kind of infrastructure, because Central and Eastern Europe, together with Scandinavian countries, will actually invest a lot into building up this connectivity, but there will not be this will not be enough, and the European Commission will actually have to invest as well. So here we have a kind of a overlapping geoeconomic interest. Final point on my side, and that is the point that the dividing line, as it was already pointed out, between geopolitics and geoeconomics has been obfuscated in a complex and interconnected world. The world of 21st century is too complex and interconnected to divide geopolitics or geoeconomics. That means that we must be aware also of the challenges. That is that our win solutions will be someone else's lose solutions. What do I mean by that is that while we are pushing for this connectivity, in this case, Europe, Gulf states, Israel, and India, and specifically UAE, as we've seen, is part also of other alternative connectivities. For instance, 2024 witnessed the launch of a connectivity corridor by Turkey together with Qatar and with Iraq, and UAE is certainly also interested in participating, rightfully so. And I also mentioned the connectivity projects of China and Russia. So what we are seeing right now is a situation, and I just mean a possibility, that we have to collectively work together to prevent from happening, namely that the new scramble of corridors, and I will be publishing very, very big article on this, the new scramble of corridors might result in an unanticipated outcome that might lead to some sort of, let's say, big confrontation that we do not want to see. So that means also, while we are thinking of all these possibilities, we should be mindful of the tools of diplomacy and the instruments of multilateralism to prevent also potential conflicts where, for instance, a regional actor sees themselves excluded from these connectivities or tries to, launch and, so to say, trigger other connectivities that might, in the end, lead us to a kind of situation in which we have more confrontation, which is not the aim of connectivity corridors. The aim is actually to connect each other, to rise the role of the middle powers and to prevent the emergence of a binary world. Nobody wants a bifurcation of the global system. Nobody wants actually a Cold War 2.0 scenario where you have to be confronted with choices and to pick sides. This is not in the interest of the middle powers. If we agree that Europe, Israel, the Gulf states, and India obviously in a more special situation as being en route to becoming world's economic power number 3, but all of them are more or less kind of middle powers. And if we agree that they can create a counterweight, a credible counterweight to any kind of centrifugal forces that want to plunge the world into a confrontational Cold War 2.0, then we might also see the potential of these connectivities while trying to engage as many actors as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Very important warning that you have provided and a foresight into what is likely to happen. But as you know that all these connectivity projects would have naturally connectivity and competition, which are inherent in these. I mean, they may not be either or kind of a situation. For example, India has been involved in INSTC for last 20 odd years, which has started picking up because of the geopolitical developments and because of the connectivity requirements. And likewise, the IMEC has been also conceived in order to provide access. But all these corridors eventually land up in Europe. So Europe is an integral part of this access approach that is being worked out. IMEC will end up in Greece, for example. And the INSTC also is aiming beyond Russia. But today, of course, the situation is very different. And you rightly mentioned that what happened with Cold War 2.0 and then China, which is not only BRI, but has this GSI, GDI, GCI, all those initiatives will get combined. And how are they going to impact? So thank you so much for that. And I'm sure there's a great food for thought for those who are policymakers in this regard. Now I'll request Dr. Korisvete to kindly take the floor. In 5 minutes, please. We are running out of time.
Yeah, that's one of the problems of being towards the end. So I want to thank everyone.
5 minutes are too little. That's the problem.
Appreciate the invitation. Very glad to be here. From my perspective, it's all about China. China's a global player that's into everything, everywhere, all the time, and making it critical for Israel, and I think our partners here in the room, to think about international cooperation from the Chinese angle. That's how I look at I2U2 and IMEC for that matter, from the Israel-China angle. A Chinese retired military and other officials have told me recently when I was in China that they're happy IMEC is dead and they think I2U2 will never amount to anything substantive. I2U2 is intrinsically important in that it opens doors of cooperation, as all of you have discussed to some degree, but it also sends a message to China. How do I look at the I2U2 partners? India is a key Indo-Pacific country. It is seen as a counterweight to China, certainly by Israel and the US and probably others, for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that it stands up to direct conflict with China. The UAE is China's pillar in the Middle East. 60% of all of China's trade with Europe and Africa go through the UAE, mainly Dubai. And then, of course, there's the space and advanced tech cooperation that China has with the UAE. And the US, of course, is China's major challenge and concern on many fronts. And Israel is a regional powerhouse. Military, intelligence, resilience, we've all proven that here quite well in the last year and a half or so. We're also an innovation and technology powerhouse, which I'll expand on in a minute. Anhil mentioned Africa, and I don't have time to discuss the significance of the Global South because I only have 4.5 minutes, but India is the rightful leader of the Global South, and that's something that we should be discussing in another venue. Then I look at this from the value proposition of minilaterals, as has been touched on here. Countries prefer bilateral cooperation because the results are more easily achievable. Certainly, Israel tends to look at things that way. Only two players, things move faster. But minilaterals, and we've seen this and you've discussed it, they have the power to impact the geostrategic landscape that is currently in a state of flux. And Anhil just mentioned the three initiatives. Reshaping global governance. We have to work together, stand together, use these minilaterals to push the agenda in our direction. And well-conceived minilaterals do impact China's thinking, and they don't have to be on the grand scale of AUKUS and the Quad. We can see that the Korea, Japan, US trilateral summit had huge impact. So moving on to the subject I've been asked to talk about, which is tech. And I'll just zip through this. Decades of being known as an innovation hub, water, food technology, biotech, semiconductor design, nanotechnology, robotics, mobility, AI, cloud computing, big data, quantum computing. We just built our first supercomputer, announced yesterday. A 20-qubit computer was developed by the Innovation Authority here, Israel Aerospace Industry, and Hebrew University cooperation. And that is critical for continuing to keep Israel on the cutting edge of that wave of fourth industrial revolution technologies, which is at the heart of the China-US rivalry. Cyber. 20% of global investment in cyber is invested in Israel, although Israel is well known to be only a very tiny fraction of the world's population, and in square kilometers, we are the size of Manipur. Defense. This extended war is leading to a blossoming of defense innovation, and excuse my mixing metaphors. As the I2U2 partners seek to strengthen their home fronts, Israel is a unique source of solutions, where partners can manufacture, produce, and benefit. And I just want you to think about the fact that none of those cutting technologies nor defense are things that Israel can do with China. Examples of defense. The IDF transformed older vehicles into some of the first ever robotic platforms to see combat. The naval version of Iron Dome, called Sea Dome, has been used already. It's now battle proven. And the last thing that I'll mention here, because I have no time, is that there have been significant improvements in Israel's air defense systems. And this is major. The arrival of the Iron Beam laser system is revolutionary. One of the reasons is that it works at the speed of light. So it intercepts rockets, mortar shells, UAVs, and missiles faster than a kinetic missile can do. It's integrated directly into the Iron Dome batteries, which have seen operation since 2011. So we know that they're very solid. And one of the most effective, there's been a lot of news about how expensive it is to shoot down these inexpensive rockets from Iran, for example, with really expensive interceptors. So the Iron Beam only costs the electricity that it uses, as opposed to the $50,000 for each interceptor of Iron Dome. And this economic efficiency disrupts the financial advantage of terrorists firing rockets and UAVs. And I spoke about the speed, and I think cooperation via I2U2 opens doors for Israel to potentially work with these groupings in any and all areas of innovation. We've already seen the beginnings of this, but the potential is enormous. And the will that I see in this room and the range of expertise tell me that it's not just potential, but something that we can actualize. And all of it is conveying to Beijing our strategic autonomy and strength in unity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Karis. That was brilliant, and you very well reiterated the points about Israel's technological prowess, and that is unquestioned and very well known, and the areas of opportunities for collaboration with that. Thank you so much. Now we have Dr. Mustafa Tahir Ali Sasa, who's probably driving as well, is the CMD of Raj Group of Companies. Dr. Sasa.
On an outset, I would like to thank His Excellency Ambassador Anil to invite me on this wonderful discussion. All the excellencies and the esteemed panelists, I would like to build upon, what my previous panelists have spoken about, this I2U2 benefit. I will speak on part of our India UAE part, which we are originally from India, but we are settled in UAE since 1958, and prior to that, 14 years in Bahrain. From 44 to till now, we are in Gulf. So we have seen this region growing every inch. And when right from my father arrived in 58, there was no water supply, electricity, no roads, no cars in UAE. In fact, that time there was no UAE. UAE was formed in 1971. But before that, until now, the major transformation which has happened, and in this transformation, the major role which is played by the India-UAE partnership. It is open fact that about 4 million Indians inhabit in UAE, which is increasing at a rapid pace. And right from the top corporates to the construction worker, we have Indians in all the segments of the economy in UAE. India is a great partner of UAE because if you see in last 18 months, there is a 6 visits, bilateral visits of top leadership. 3 times Prime Minister Modi has visited UAE. Twice His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed has visited India. President of UAE has visited to India, and very recently, about 3 months back, there was a visit of the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi to India. This India-UAE partnership is, I think, the foundational stone for the I2U2, because other partnership, what we see, are quite young, but India-UAE partnership goes on almost 1,000 years, where the Indian trade was being forwarded through this region of the peninsula, and especially from the part of the UAE, which that time was fragmented in different kingdoms. So this strong partnership between India and UAE has really it's a foundational stone in the I2U2. Now, this partnership is already growing at a rapid pace, may it be as a data flow, may it be as a human resource, or in oil trade or non-oil trade. It has been increasing at a very rapid pace. And very recently, post pandemic, we have seen that every country is now looking out for food security, and in that, the food security treaty between India and UAE plays also a major role. The CEPA has become a game changer in this relationship. And the shortest uh, comprehensive this trade agreement was signed with any country you see was UAE and India. So this CEPA has really boosted the trade between India and UAE. Now, this in the jewelry market, in the textile, in industrial products, you name the product where India is a, India and UAE have become an extended arm for each other's country. So with this partnership and with UAE is having super infrastructure in air, in marine, with having the largest port is Jebel Ali, where 80 mother vessels are touching over here. With this trade hub, the material can go to about more than 80 countries, and it is going from here. So with this all advantage, the trade between India and UAE is increasing at a very rapid pace. Now, looking at the global trade, with this corridor, which is very strong of India UAE, and that can benefit the entire world and especially the Eastern Europe, North Africa, East Africa. These are the areas uh, where the trade flow happens through the port of Jebel Ali, and DP World is governing around 80 ports around the world, and many of them are more than 25 ports in Africa. So Africa is one of the continent which has highest benefited from this India UAE partnership, and the material which comes to DP World then flown to all other DP World ports where they have their presence. Currently, we have touch base of our product in more than 100 countries, and with the help of DP World, we have reached most of the isolated countries where we are not able to go on our own has helped us. So this has already boosted the overall trade between the two countries and benefiting beyond India and UAE. So this I2U2 will play a major role in creating a trade. And as my previous speaker, Mr. Shenoy, said that the fundamental requirement of trade to thrive is security, and UAE is one of the most and the best secured country in the world right now. So that's why we have seen the flow of UHNIs coming to UAE, and that has really escalated the property price to the beyond the roof. Never unheard such property prices before because of this flow of the UHNIs. And why they come here? Because they see the comprehensive growth of and fundamental security, and then comprehensive the requirements are fulfilled. So well, this corridor is a wonderful it's alternate to many other marine routes, but still once it can come into reality when we have a secured path. So India UAE enjoys this path, and this relationship India and UAE has helped bilaterally to in growth of both economies and taking it further. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sasa. Listening to you, I thought that UAE could not have asked for a better ambassador. The way you are projecting the UAE, and of course, the India UAE qualitative advantage that you talked about. That's indeed. Thank you so much, and they are very important
Sir,
markers.
I was just to one I was brand ambassador of Vibrant Gujarat for 15, 17, and 19. So, already every Indian is an ambassador, every person is an ambassador of that country outside their country.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. And now we have, I think, in the audience, Mr. James Carafano. So for 5 minutes, if he would like to share his thoughts
Thanks,
before
or
we ask the
less.
question and answer.
Yeah, or less.
Or
Look,
less.
I just
Less,
wanted to
James.
point out,
Good to see you. Good to see you.
thank you. I just wanted to point out that I2U2 is actually the confluence of 4 corridors. So it is, and the point made that the need to dramatically expand the throughput through the Middle East is absolutely a global strategic imperative. And this is vital to the future of the success of the Southern Corridor. So we all get that, and we all understand the importance of IMEC. Valina, my good buddy, pointed out that the natural partner of this is the 3Cs initiative, where you take another 100 million people and economies, and it provides a clear linkage of the European economy to the Middle East. That's true. But then you also have the Caucasus Central Asia corridor, which will also benefit from IMEC, and which will actually be a natural conduit for Japan, Korea, India, Taiwan to actually move goods and services into the Caucasus and out of the center. And then what we never talk about enough is that North and East Africa are going to be an integral part of this ecosystem, and so they are going to be also be opportunities to benefit as well. So all I really wanted to highlight is the 3Cs is going to have their annual initiatives meeting in Warsaw in April. I don't think the date's been announced yet. As you know, President Duda, who will be the host, because in the European context, the presidents are hosts of the dialogue. I'm almost positive he's already invited President Trump to that. President Trump in his first term was a great advocate of the 3Cs initiative from the U.S. perspective. There's economic and security benefits to that are good for us. It focuses on, like IMEC, like I2U2, on private sector investments. That was also very attractive to him. So we think it'll be attractive again. We think if Duda has invited him, it's very likely that he or a very senior U.S. representative will go. As you know, President Trump and Maloney have a growing, important strategic partnership. And, I've often argued that Italy needs to be part of the 3Cs initiative, and because Italy, and particularly the port of Trieste, sit right at the confluence of the I2U2 efforts and the 3Cs. As you know, Maloney's also not only been a strong advocate of I2U2 and IMEC, she has also been one of Europe's leading advocates on engaging the African economies of North and East Africa. So there's this tremendous opportunity to have Modi, Maloney, and Trump. If we could just get him to change his name from Trump to Mump, we'd have perfect alliteration. But Modi, Maloney, and Trump together in Warsaw, I think that would be an incredibly powerful statement of linking these corridors together. And I think just a great opportunity for all of us to really highlight the strategic momentum behind this. So for anybody that's talking to those 3 leaders, I just think it's something to really, really focus on. And if I have 10 seconds, I'll just finish on this. I appreciated Valina and the other comments about competition and global blocks and everything else. I've always viewed this idea of free and open spaces, which really started with India's leadership and Japan, and the idea of the free and open is a notion as a way to sidestep this. I've never thought that a rules-based order made any sense at all. It's just stupid. There are no rules and nobody's enforcing the rules. But I do believe in an interest-based order. So if you have countries coming together with common interests to build connectivity, then other people have a choice. They can either participate or not participate. But the people that have a common interest they're going to support and defend that. So I think if we don't want a world that breaks up into blocks and hardened spheres, and we want to offer particularly middling powers, which have a lot of interest and a lot of resources, an opportunity, a way to do this idea of linking the free and open spaces together on a voluntary basis is absolutely the right thing. Ambassador, I thought your comments are absolutely totally spot on. So thank you for letting me jump in here at the end and make a comment. So it's an amazing panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I think your innovative ideas about the MMT group is pretty good. And let's hope that works out. Of course, as you know, Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Maloney also share a tremendous and vibrant relationship. And I think India and Italy partnership has really grown in the past few years under their leadership. And there is always different. I mean, I've been talking to Vas as well, and we heard you earlier that there are, of course, Italy is one country which has been very actively engaged in this Middle East and both Africa. Even the last G7 summit, the Africa was one of the focuses. So thank you so much for this. Now, may I revert to certain questions? Most of these questions have been answered by the panelists. But if I may, there is a question by Chandan Kumar, which says that does UAE embrace more IMEC or BRI? Dr. Janardhan, would you like to take that?
I think I answered that question already, saying that
You did.
it
I
would
mean,
be
in fact, all
unfair
questions
to
have been
say that
answered.
the UAE is partial to either. It's not partial, it's not impartial. I think that's the way that countries are engaging with now. You're with everyone. There is really no ideology involved. There is no preference. It's a bit like diversifying your investment in the stock market, right? You don't put all your money in one stock. You diversify your bets, and that's exactly what countries are doing. I mean, for example, the UAE is not just part of IMEC and BRI, it's also part of the development road project that has been initiated by Turkey and Iraq. So it's all over, and that's the nature of the game now. And so to see any sort of preference or partiality would be unfair. And I think UAE is partial to itself and not to anybody else.
Thank you. There are two questions by Aditya Bhan. One is how will deeper engagement within the I2U2 framework impact the future of India's ties with Iran? And by extension, India's ability to wield influence in the South Caucasus and its land connectivity initiatives with Europe. And you see, as far as this question is concerned, if I may say, that India has been following a policy of multi alignment. Iran is also an important partner for India. And as you know, the Chabahar port, the Indian company, has got a 10-year contract there. And India is investing about $250 million in that also. So it is not either or, as far as India's point of view is concerned. The connectivity is extremely important. And from Chabahar to Central Asia, via Iran is something that India looks to. Likewise, Afghanistan, which is an important neighbor, the connectivity there is also equally important for India, given our own neighborhood complexities. So I don't see that it is going to have any major impact because we are partners in Quad, we are partners in BRICS, so we know how to navigate various groupings, and they are essentially for the mutual interest. And until and unless, as Dr. Jaishankar says, there are three M's. They play around, and that is mutual interest, mutual sensitivity, and mutual respect. So that's the way it goes. He also asks, what are some ways in which I2U2 can contribute meaningfully to global energy security? Who would like to take that?
I'd like to say something on that topic if I can.
Yeah, Vas. Yes.
Simply, when you talk about I2U2, you're also talking about, first of all, the legacy energy countries which are led by the UAE in the GCC, because IMEC itself then brings into play Saudi Arabia, the world's largest producer of traditional crude, etc., etc. But more importantly, Israel and India and the United States, to a large extent, have been leading efforts along with the UAE in the adoption of new and renewable energies. So, the hydrogen pipeline or the production of green hydrogen or clusters that the UAE has promoted, Israel has promoted, India has promoted for the development of new technologies. The ISA, the Solar Alliance that India promotes, which I think is, I think that there was recently, last week, another country that joined the International Solar Alliance. So I think there is a whole effort specifically with the I2U2 countries on two levels. One, to create new technologies to replace traditional energy sources, and the second, to connect these efforts and to aggregate these efforts. So I think on the new and renewable energies, all four countries have priorities and are leaders. And in any case, along the Indo-Mediterranean, it's the largest channel and passage for traditional energy ships and sources. So in all cases, security of these four countries is also security of the trade routes.
Thank you, Vas. Last question we'll take, and which is by Nuranjana Kashyap. How can Israel's high-tech sector drive I2U2 self-reliance, address global challenges, and boost its geopolitical influence? I think it was very well answered, but still, Dr. Karis, would you like to take it again, quickly?
Quickly, as I said, Israel is very open to joint R&D in a lot of areas. So it's not just the technology that we have that we may bring. We are very willing to work together to develop the technology so that advances the domestic interests. Production in perhaps India, where it's very cost effective. Investment maybe from UAE, US umbrella, and maybe distribution networks. So everyone brings their added value, and tech transfer is something that Israel is doing in very sensitive areas, defense, for example, in India, because of being trusted partners and because Israel respects India's interest in Make in India. And so we're flexible, adaptable, we accommodate, and so we can take our outstanding innovation skills and bring them to the added value of the other of our partners, and benefit from Israel getting the result of the R&D, having purchases made of whatever it is that's produced, that Israel owns IP, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's win-win, win-win across the board.
Thank you. Well, I think that we have arrived at 7 o'clock now, exceeded by about half an hour, but at the same time, I must thank you all for bringing very varied and very great perspectives. I think it is one of the finest discussion on the I2U2, and their contributions are greatly appreciated. And thank you for joining us today. I would now pass on to Mihir.
Thank you, Ambassador Trigunath, for moderating the session, and for all the esteemed panelists to share their insights and views. We'll be compiling them in form of a report, and we will also be taking this as food for thought for further studies, briefing papers, reports, projects, where we can imagine the place as a better place to live in. I'm joined by my colleague Pradeep S. Mehta on behalf of him, and another colleague Purshendra Singh. I thank you and for all the speakers to be part of this wonderful session. And last but not the least, we had about 40 odd participants. We thank them from the bottom of our hearts to join this session and take the discussion forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your outstanding leadership in this. It's a really professional group. I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.